boards. Hello and welcome to a Monday edition of the Osceola Seminole Sidelines. My name is Pat Burnham and I am joined by Bob Ferrante, Jerry Cutts, and Mark Salva as we're going through a little group therapy Monday after FSU falls to 1-6 after losing to Duke 23-16 on Friday night. Guys, we're not going to rehash most of the Duke game for several reasons. A, we've had 3 days to deal with it. We've all watched the film again and really no reason to belabor the point. So I'm going to give everybody about a minute just to talk about their. Mark and I have watched the tape again. I'm sure you guys have watched some of it, but just to put a bow on it and move on because we want to talk about the future of Florida State football because we got plenty of time to talk about Miami on Tuesday and Thursday. But just going back and watching it, guys, and I know Bob was on the thread as much as I was yesterday and today. This is a game Florida State could have won. Couple of three or four plays go different. They win as bad as they played on offense. They should have won. There are a lot of things that encapsulates what's going on with this team in this game, the negative results in this game. And you can point out, we talked a little bit about buy-in at practice today, guys. And as I go back through the rewatch, and there were some good things that happened. I thought several players had the best games of their careers at Florida State. Omar Graham, Fentrell Cypress, so forth and so on, and was really happy with the way Brock Glenn responded after he got removed from the game and put back in. But that being said, you're 1-6, not a very good look when you lose to Duke. One of the more disappointing things, and I think it speaks to buy-in and coaching, when Brock threw the interception for a touchdown, if you watch the receiver they threw to, no effort chasing the guy down, made no effort to tackle the guy, that's buy-in. That shows me that there's some systemic things in this program right now that they cannot get straightened out. Then I think the one thing that summarizes the incompetence of this offense in the fourth quarter, Florida State has to take a timeout inside the red zone or close to the red zone because it took them 22 seconds to get a running back in the game. From the time the play clock started, that running back did not get on the field until 17 seconds. Then took them another 10 seconds to figure out what formation they wanted to be in. And then, obviously, Brock did not get the ball snapped on time. It was a failure from the sideline to the center and the quarterback, and I think it summed up Florida State's season in a nutshell in one play. Bob, I'll go to you.
I think this offense lacks confidence and presumes that things are going to snowball in the wrong direction on them. Anything from Kentron catching that one ball, I think Florida State wins this game on just that one play in itself, giving receivers confidence, giving the quarterbacks confidence, giving the offensive line the feel good of we blocked the quarterback through, the receiver caught. We have the confidence of a scoring drive that's a touchdown and not just setting up for a field goal. I think this confidence issue is not just a Duke game issue. It's been season long. It's been drops and blocking and quarterback decision making. It's systemic across the entire offense. I think that's what kind of concerns me is just who do you count on? Who do you feel is dependable? Yes, it's a receiver question, but really across the board to some extent with this offense. That's really difficult when you're talking about a Florida State Duke matchup where you think Florida State's got those kind of edges. But that's what you're facing 7 games into the year.
Yep. Mark?
So to me, it's all about FSU. It's all about FSU's offense. We talked Saturday or Friday night about, the things that bad football teams do. For this offense to be productive, it's got to play flawlessly on the things that it can control. It's got to be, no penalties, no dead ball penalties. execution, of a plan and going into the game. I mean, Bob, you're talking about confidence. What gives a team confidence? Well, that they go into the week and they see a path to victory, right? So you go in, coaches present the plan. If we do these things, we will win the game. And then do everything in their power to prepare themselves moving forward, that if they execute it, they will see success. And Mike always talks about putting in the work, and that's what it is. It's putting in the work, but it starts with the coaches coming up with a path to victory that the players buy into, and then they work to execute that plan. And when you have drops, when you have penalties, when you have turnovers, to your point again, Bob, that's all like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And, they have to go in with the conviction that we're going to eliminate those things that we can control, and execute the plan moving forward. And it starts in your preparation, obviously, but to go in and attack it. I think that's the other thing. I think it feels to me like they go in again expecting something bad to happen, and then everything just kind of whatever. I mean, somebody needs to take this thing by the throat, right? Take this thing by the throat and say, we're going to get it done, and just get it done, right? Just go in and attack it. To me, that's Mike's personality, but I just don't see it in the moment, right? Yep. And so it's those things. I mean, defense played good enough to win. Yep. Let's be honest. And Duke wasn't very good on offense, but that doesn't matter. We can't help that. Yeah. We've played other teams that the defense has played good enough to win, but that lack of productivity on offense is leaking to the defensive side. How many times do we have to get a 3 and out? How many times do we have to stop them on our side of the 50? It's all of those things put together. Again, it's what happens in bad football teams. But if they would just eliminate the bad plays, right? And again, to your point, Bob, if they catch the ball or we don't turn the ball over 3 times in a row, we win that game. Yeah. And that's the teaching moment in this film to me. The biggest teaching moment is it's about us, right?
Yeah. All right, Jerry, any last thoughts on Duke as we move forward to the rest of the conversation?
No, I think you all summed it up.
All right. Well, listen, we're going to talk about Miami a lot, but there's the next, really, it's not even 3 months. It's between now and essentially December 29th when I think the portal window closes. But and what we want to talk about is a little bit about the long-term future of Florida State football, and obviously the long-term future of Mike Norvell to a lesser extent, because as Jerry will tell us in a few minutes, I don't think he's going anywhere. Now you can argue that he should, but that's not the reality of what's going on behind the scenes with the finances. But Florida State's got a lot of things going on in the next basically 8 weeks. You've got Miami, North Carolina, Notre Dame, Charleston Southern, and Florida to finish out the season. You've got early National Signing Day on December 4th. The portal opens on December 8th. Through December and closes on the 29th, I believe that's right, Bob. It's the 28th, maybe midnight on the 28th. And then, of course, listen, guys, Mark, you and I have been inside the business. We've been on a staff that had a similar type season, and the head coach is probably not going anywhere, but there are going to be some changes coming. I'm not comfortable with this part of the conversation, and I'm not going to get into names and all of that. I think you can go look at position groups and figure that out for yourselves, and we'll talk about that on down the road. They still got 5 more games to play, and we're going to give them the respect of finishing out that, and when changes come, we'll address them, but we know they are coming. They have to, and they're going to be demanded by certain people and power brokers that have the leverage to ensure those things happen. And Mark, you've been a part of that. I've been a part of that. I've been a part of it on multiple staffs at South Carolina with you, and then obviously at South Florida when I worked for Skip. But Jerry, there's the clamoring for heads really hit an apex on Friday night after this game, where people want Mike gone. They want just about every assistant on the staff gone. And I know you're working on an article right now that addresses some of this. So we'll start with you on this. What is the long-term prognosis for Mike Norvell and his coaching staff?
Well, I think you summarized it by saying I don't see Mike going anywhere unless he chooses to, for a couple of reasons, one of which is the financial part. But I want to talk about the process. What this article is about is it's not about whether any coaches should be fired or deserve to be fired or not. What it's about, the article is about what that process is within an athletic department, the evaluation of your coaches, and then what the costs are to make a coaching change. And so I kind of broke it down that way. Let me start with that. I think that when you're on the outside, like we are in the media and the fans are on the outside of the program, what we see is the scoreboard. And every single one of us is capable of reading a scoreboard. You know, it's a 1-in-6 team. It's a team that has such obvious flaws that they're repetitive. I mean, every week it's the same story. It's just a different flavor of the same story. On the inside, when you're working in athletics, there's an internal scoreboard, is my metaphor, I guess you'd say. And that internal scoreboard of the head coach measures a lot of things besides what's going on the external scoreboard. And I mean, it's things like energy, player relations, recruiting, academics, community, organization, mostly organization. I really start there with organization. Is the coach organized? Does he have energy? Is he communicating with his coaches and players and the athletic administration? Willie Taggart got fired more because of the internal scoreboard than he did the external scoreboard. And the reason that is that if you're not winning on the internal scoreboard, you're never going to win on the external one. And I think what differentiates Mike Norvell from Willie Taggart is that internal scoreboard. Mike's doing a lot of things right. When he got in here, he's been here 5 years, and you'd think you'd get better with this season. But throughout his time here, he's been excellent at administration, at organization, communication, all those things that the athletic director and the president of the university are looking at. Those are all predictors of future success. And so before we get into the financial part of it, I think, the intangible part of it, if you will, I'm not sure it's intangible, I think it's very tangible, is the guys getting it done on the inside, and which is a predictor of future success. I mean, as you look at Mike, 23 out of 27 games he won. He took a program that was nowhere. And in 22 and 23, went 10-3, 13-0 during the regular season, won the ACC championship, and was poised to get a playoff bid that everybody thought we were robbed of. He won the Bear Bryant Coach of the Year award last year. Now, did the guy forget how to coach? And I think that's the way Michael Alford looks at it, the president of the university, and the people on the what you referred to, Pat, as the power brokers.
Yeah.
I think those guys are looking at a guy saying, hell, we got a coach that we thought was one of the best in the country, that Alabama interviewed to replace Nick Saban. I mean, I don't even know why we're having the conversation, is what most of those guys tell me. And so the thing is, if you're the athletic director and that's your assessment, and I don't know for certain that is Alford's, but I have every reason to believe it is in conversations.
Well,
Then what you look at next is how do we help this guy win? What is the why? Why are we struggling? And what do we need to do to fix it? And you obviously, as you know, you start looking at your assistant coaches and you say, which of these guys is scoring high on our internal scoreboard? And which of the guys are not? And I can tell you, and from my, and I come to this is with 42 years of watching it. I've, was 20 years in the administration where I knew those conversations were going on. I've talked to the ADs who led those conversations. And that's the process you go through. Can this guy win? Is he doing the things that are predictors of future success? And I think, and so at any rate, that process has been ongoing. And so now we could, in a minute after you, let me take your thoughts, but I want to talk about, what about with the assistant coaches and what changes, how that process would look. But go ahead, Pat. You had a comment.
Well, what I was going to say is I think first of all, I think that there probably are conversations we're not aware of that are going on behind the scenes. I think we've all been around college football. We all have our own experience. We all know how these things work behind closed doors. I think there are conversations going on that we're not aware of, and the math does add up. And, I've heard Mike talk about it, and we were 13-0 last year. We're 13-0. I've heard him talk to it twice after losses and post-game press conferences. And I've heard the people that are supportive of Mike and the staff talk about 13-0 last year. And they were 13-0, and you can't take that away from them. But I think when you talk about the staff in its entirety, you have to look at the 5 years that he's been here. And is he the 13-0 guy? Or is he the guy that lost to Jacksonville State? And I think the truth is somewhere in between. I don't think you can throw the baby out with the bathwater. You can't play the extremes on both sides. And so there's a middle point here that shows you who Mike Norvell is as a head coach and who the staff is as a guys that are have the ability to get this team where it needs to be year in and year out. And I do, and maybe there are power brokers that don't understand why we're having this conversation, but and I think Mark will agree with me, and I'll ask him to chime in. But Florida State is 1-6, and you cannot be 1-6 at Florida State. I mean, it's not particularly in a fifth year. So I think that's why people are talking about it. Mark, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, it's not a static situation in terms of his ability to lead this program. The thing is, you're right. He went 13-0 last year. And he built it to that point. He did it one time. And when he has a preponderance of talent, he seems to be able to produce results. Now, we go into this year, and it's obvious that we've missed on talent evaluation, and not just athletically. I'm talking mental makeup, team building, all that stuff. That is at the core of our issue right now, is we're not as good as we think we are. And even the guys that are good, we're not playing collectively as a team. Now, is that all on Mike? No, he obviously there's 9 other guys that are involved in the process. And so to Jerry's point, in that evaluation part, where did we fall short? Talent acquisition and team building, right? The culture of this team stinks right now in that locker room. You see the results on the field. That's the only conclusion you can come to. I don't care what you're saying you're seeing out in practice. These guys aren't producing, and they're not playing collectively. Last year, this team was better than the sum of its parts. And these parts were pretty daggum good. We had a great quarterback. We had some great defensive players, 6 of whom are on NFL rosters right now. We had 2 receivers who one had 125 yards of receiving yesterday, right? And it's Mike it's kind of gotten away from him. We were ahead in the transfer portal, right? We hit in the transfer portal, and we were ahead of the curve in how we evaluated, how we acquired those and recruited those kids, right? but now everybody else is kind of caught up. So we've kind of lost that advantage, and we've also lost the advantage of having, you know, a high visibility, successful program where we don't have to pay premium. Because now, if we're going to get somebody, we're going to have to pay a premium price in this NIL era, right? So all of that stuff is true. Now, moving forward, is Mike the guy to continue to rebuild this program a second time? Because that's exactly where we're at. I agree with Jerry. I love his energy. I love his organization. I think he's a really, really smart guy, but he can't do it by himself.
Nope.
Right? There's 9 or 10 other guys that are involved. More than that. I mean, you've got the people in support roles probably that have fallen short in the evaluation process of these players. Because look, the bottom line is this: it's about talent acquisition, right? Mike proved that he has the talent. He can produce results. It's acquiring that talent. To me, that's got to be the priority. So that means recruiting. That means transfer portal. That means retention of your talent. All of that, to me, is key. And moving forward, is Mike the guy to get that done? And to Jerry's point, there's an internal evaluation that has to happen to be sure that he is the right guy. I think he is, just from what I know about the guy. Right? But I'm not on the inside. It's the things that are around Mike they're going to have to get a hard look at.
Bob, you got anything before Jerry goes on to the next point?
Yeah, I think, you know, I did a story maybe a week or two ago about Mike Norvell's first couple of signing classes, the 21 and the 22 classes, because you almost have to discount the 2020 transition class. He was here for 2 weeks, and he's required to build some semblance of a signing class between what Willie Taggart recruited and then what he could bring in. I think Mike Norvell made a decision on who to hire as an assistant coach and did not bring in a lot of state of Florida high school football connected recruiters. Yes, he kept Odell Hagens and he kept Ron Dugans. We wanted Ryan Silverfield here. I think because he was a Jacksonville guy, because he had connections to the state of Florida. Norvell, to some extent, is going to have to look at who does he trust to hire as the next assistant coach at whatever position, but that guy has to have Florida recruiting ties, or you need to bring in those people who can build relationships and connections. I said this on the message board weeks ago too. People have asked about Randy Shannon, and people have asked about, you know, Patrick Surtain. Are they good coaches? Are they good developers of talent? They are here because of their connections within the state of Florida, specifically within South Florida. They are here so that when Mike Norvell needs to make a phone call or connect to a prospect or a high school coach, that phone call is answered or that text is responded to. This next staff, however many guys Mike Norvell moves on from, he needs to find guys who he trusts and who have those connections across the state, or it's just not going to work moving forward. I believe passionately in that. It's about those Florida relationships to rebuild this roster.
Jerry, what was you were going to move on? I believe the assistant coaches and
Yeah, well, before we go to assistant coaches, I tried to lead with the part about the evaluation of Mike based on non-financial.
Yeah.
You know, is the guy capable of doing it? Forget how much money we would have to pay to buy him out. Can he do it? That's the first thing you got to look at. And I think that, as I said, I think their evaluation of him is that, yeah, he's worth staying with, and then, you know, you're evaluating the assistants, which I'll get to in a minute. But there's also a financial thing. I see all these message board posts, so we got to get rid of Mike and do it now. And what those people may not realize is last year he was signed to a 8-year contract. And it's a contract that if we were to terminate him, we would have to pay him that money for the next 7 years, which would be, based upon my calculations, somewhere between $60 and $65 million to fire a guy that was just named the Bear Bryant Coach of the Year last year. So you would have to have overwhelming, compelling evidence that this guy can't do it for you to say we're going to spend $65 million that we don't know where that money would come from. at a time next year where we're going to have to be paying a revenue share of $22.5 million. Oh, more than that with scholarship additions. So the money just isn't there. Even if you wanted to do it, you would have to really want to do it to commit that kind of money to do it. And I don't think we could, even with the bond issues on the facilities we're building. So I think for those people who think that we're going to fire Mike Norvell, I just don't see that happening for the two reasons I mentioned. All right, now you get on to the assistant coaches, and I think that's all fair game. And I do know that throughout the course of the year, Michael Alford meets with Michael Norvell, probably 3 or 4 times a week to talk about football because it is the cash cow. And Alford has his finger on that pulse. So I think when Alford and Norvell talk, I think Mike Norvell is very transparent with Alford. And I think Alford can see with his eyes, just like the fans can, what the problems are on that football team. And I think those conversations are ongoing and real about, Mike, what do we got to do? What do I need to do as an athletic director to give you the resources you need to win tomorrow? What's it going to take? And which of your coaches are guys, what does the internal scoreboard on those guys look like?
I'm assuming when you say resources, you mean coaches because they're giving them every other resource known to man.
Assistant coaches. That's what we're talking about. So which of your assistant coaches is getting it done? Which ones are organized, recruiting, communicating with their players, communicating with you? The same evaluation you do of the head coach, you're doing on every one of those assistants. And I think Mike Norvell will communicate with Michael Alford as to what changes he thinks he needs. And I think the university will find the money to do that for sure. And
I don't think they have a choice. I mean, you can't stay with the status quo, and I don't think it's necessarily that involved when it comes to assistant coaches. And Mark, you can chime in. I think you're either getting the job done or you're not. I'm not sure how much outside of recruiting and development. I'm not sure how much any of the other stuff bears into assistant coach's future.
Well, especially when you consider, coaches coach now. I mean, we have support staff for every function within the athletic department. And back in my day, you had multiple functions as a football coach.
Yes.
You handled different aspects of the program. That's not the case anymore, right? You have recruiting assistants. Yeah, you have recruiting assistants. You have facilities managers. You have academic people. Back in my day, coaches did all that. So it's just about the product you see on the field and the ability to evaluate and procure and develop talent. And
I would add, I think
groups have 2 coaches coach them.
I think one of the things that's changed since you guys were in it and that you just pointed out, there's a lot more people. And so is your staff functioning?
Is it too big?
Are they communicating with each other? Are they a good fit? And if you got guys that aren't doing that guy may need to go.
Well, from the outside looking in, that's the thing that impressed me about Mike the most. And you talked about organization. Some of these staffs are so frivolous with the amount of personnel that they have. There's sometimes more coaches than their support staff than there are players. It seemed to me that Mike had it pretty organized and all the functions clearly defined, that we had the right people in the right places to do the right things. Now, are those people pulling their weight and pulling these things through? That's the evaluation that has to happen.
Exactly. And when you have a huge staff like these staffs are now today, I think it could actually be harder because in the Bowden era, he could look at, he had that little book with 10 coaches' names in it that defined every one of their responsibilities. So if Salva, if you weren't getting done, he could call you in.
Right.
And now if he calls Salva in and Salva says, well, my GA was supposed to do that, or my
recruiting assistant, or
my recruiting assistant, or my analyst.
Right.
Now it comes down to, well, Mark, maybe you're not doing a good job of communicating with your analyst. Yeah. I mean, it's just it's a benefit to have all those guys, but it can also hurt you.
Yeah, listen, I wonder, getting to that point, I remember we made fun of Florida when they had more support staff and coaches than they did players in their team picture. And Florida State's off-field staff has continued to get bigger and bigger and bigger. One of the concerns I have is there's too many voices in that building. Like I said, you've got multiple. You go watch the linebackers practice, and they're getting coached by two different guys. You go watch the offensive line, and they're getting coached by two different guys in two different parts of the field. I just wonder if there's too many voices. I wonder if that's part of the problem. Each position group needs to have one defining voice. There needs to be one guy, and that should be the offensive line. That's Alex Atkins, and the linebacker room, that's Randy Shannon. Regardless of who else they got help from, at the end of the day, it falls on the on-field full-time assistant coach, regardless of everything else. I just wonder if there's too many voices, kids hearing too many voices, because you've got so much support staff and people have different beliefs, philosophies, all those kind of things.
The bottom line is there's a lot of areas where we're just not very good, and it goes back down again: talent procurement, talent acquisition, and then developing that talent. And because that's the bottom line. Regardless of who's talking to them, regardless of all of that, I think that's where we have to start, 100%.
Yeah.
Right?
And so, bottom line is, those evaluations are going on right now. I know that. And, the question is, when you go to make these changes, at what time do you do it? When is the best time to make the change? You do it in mid-season? Do you do it at the end of the season? How does it affect your recruiting class? How does it affect retention of the players on your staff? Because now, on your current roster that you want to keep, because now players can transfer and be eligible immediately.
And that's the awkward thing about it too, Jerry, because if you let a guy go at the end of the season and the coach you want is on another team that's going to a bowl game or the playoffs, you've got that lag between when you let a guy go and when you're going to get a guy. And in between all of that, you have transfer portal, recruiting, all of that. And it just makes it really, really awkward.
Well, and so I don't think there's a right or wrong answer for.
No, there's not.
I think each position coach, you have to think about it. When's the best time for this guy if we're going to let him go? And the other factor, Mark and Pat, you guys know, you never fix a problem firing somebody. You fix the problem by hiring the right guy to replace him.
Yeah.
So is that guy available?
Exactly.
Well, I think clearly Mike's going to wait till after the season to make any changes. I think he should. You brought him into the season with you. You need to finish the season with him. I just think that's right. Like, I don't think it's right what they did to the guy at Utah and the guy that they got rid of the coordinator at Oklahoma yesterday, and the offensive coordinator at Utah yesterday. That guy had been in that program 10 years. Now, I know one thing that's not going to happen. He's not going to fire anybody before December 5th because he's going to wait till National Signing Day to get here. And holding on to these 12 commitments is critical over this class. So I don't see him doing anything till at least December 5th. Now, I don't know that he needs to have a full staff to work the portal. He's got an immense front office staff with Derek Ray and all those guys that work in college scouting. They do have a department that works on portal, evaluating opposing colleges' film. So they're probably already looking at that. But yes, I agree with you. I think whatever staff changes will take place between December 5th and December 31st, because that's when the portal window closes. You got National Signing Day on December 4th. then portal opens up on the 8th and closes on the 29th. So I think everything, that's why I say between now and December 29th is going to define Mike's long-term future at Florida State, because all these things are happening. Now, does he, they've got to, maybe he holds on to him to the 29th because he's got to recruit his own roster, because there's probably going to be some attrition on this roster based on the season. Do y'all agree with that?
No doubt.
I think there'll be some.
I think it's going to.
No.
Well,
I think it'll be more than some.
If I'm an opposing coach and I'm looking at this roster and there's guys on this roster that I recruited that I really liked that I haven't performed, you can bet your bottom dollar if there's a way to get to that guy's ear, I'm going to do it. So I imagine there's going to be people coming after some of our guys. Right?
Oh, for sure.
So get ready for that.
Well, listen, we heard the other night about how good FSU's talent is on defense from the commentators, and how many pro scouts there were at the Wallace Wade Stadium to watch them. And obviously, if Mark, to your point, if this is a culture problem, then some of these kids will want out. And listen, and there's going to be some kids that need to wean out too that haven't produced, and that's just the nature of the business that they're in today. I mean, you're paying kids. If they're not producing, you got to go on, and that the portal gives you an opportunity. And I know one thing when it comes to that, Mike and his staff are very good about helping kids find a new college home. I'll give them total credit for that. They do work for these kids to get them placed, the kids that can't play here. But yeah, I believe that that there'll be more activity in the portal than most people are expecting. That's my belief, my opinion. I'm just basing this off of what I see from this football team, and the fact that there does seem to be an internal issue.
But going back to your point too, that can make it very expensive for the 2025 roster management. You might have to overpay to retain a player, in addition to overpaying on the portal prospect. You might just be overpaying to keep those guys that you really want, that you really like. You like their attitude. You think there might be a leader down the road, but you also know that somebody else out there in the college football world is tampering, is evaluating your roster, and might want to grab that guy too. It's the bummer from a pure money standpoint. It's going to be an expensive ordeal to keep the guys that you want, as well as bring in the guys that you want.
Hey, and I'd like to chime in on that if you don't mind. We're talking about this like there's money growing on some tree. You only got so much NIL money.
It's a budget.
And there's a budget. And I suspect there'll be less money in that budget next year, because the people that have been giving it to it this year may not be so inclined to give to it next year. So Derek Ray and those guys, they've got a fixed amount of money to spend. There's no overpaying for guys.
Well, allocation, let's put it that way. You might have to allocate more for less.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what it'll be. But look,
I mean, you're going to have guys that, you're just going to run out of money.
Well, hey, some of these handsomely paid coaches are going to start giving the battles in, but I mean, I remember assistant coach telling me before the portal NIL existed, and he's coached for a long time. He told me, you better believe some of these coaches that are making $800,000 are skimming a little bit off the top to get to some of these players. And listen, they probably should have made sure there was more money going to battles in before they gave all these coaches these big ass raises. They started paying the coaches before they started paying the players this offseason. I think that might be part of the problem.
Well, look, as you know, they're two different budgets.
Yeah.
Here's what a lot of this can be mitigated by winning. Got me? Sorry. A lot of this can be mitigated by winning, right? We still got 5 games, and I know it looks hapless right now, but I think there's 3 on there that we have a chance, right? I think North Carolina, Charleston Southern, and Florida at home, we have a chance, right? Miami, it would have to, something supernatural is going to have to happen. Defense is going to have to play out of their mind, and Miami's just going to have to implode. I mean, it could happen. I mean, who knows, right?
Anything can happen. Anything is
can
possible.
happen. Cam Ward might run out of bounds and somebody late hits him and he's out for the rest of the game. Who knows?
And that's why we're all going to watch the game.
That's why we're watching the game. So, I mean,
because our internal belief that anything is possible on any given Saturday.
On any given Saturday. And we know that. And we've been the victim of that, right?
Yes.
We've totally been the victim of that.
Go back to Jacksonville State.
Go back to Jacksonville State. Go back to any number of games. I want to start talking Southern Miss. I mean, whatever, right? So, yeah, it's to get this feeling that we have right now out, to gain momentum in recruiting and in the portal, right? To show a pulse to this program, it is critical. We got to win some of these games, right? Or else it's just we're just keep spiraling. And no more important than this week, you know. And really, I'm not a moral victory guy, but if we show signs of life, it at least give us a little bit of hope moving forward from maybe 3 games we can win out of this deal.
Well, and to your point, listen, you've got to beat either North Carolina or Florida in addition to Charleston Southern. I don't think you can go 2-10. Now, another thing that's probably besides the financial situation is, as it pertains to Mike, is the calendar itself. Because if you were going to, I don't think they ever saw this coming. Like most ADs and power brokers within a university usually have a 12-month runway, right? They know there was a struggle the year before, and I've got my short list. I'm making my phone calls. I'm doing my background checks. I'm doing the third-party reach out. Would you have interest in the job? And there's no way, unless Mike Alford is a soothsayer, that he saw this coming. There's no way that they were prepared to make a coaching change because they're, right, as you said, and as everybody seems to be honing in on, the 13-0. So there's no way they saw this coming. They signed the guy to 8-year extension, and so I think that's the other thing that works to Mike's benefit, because now, in addition to early National Signing Day, in addition to the portal, now you'd have to worry about trying to bring in a new head coach and a new staff. I mean, it just doesn't work with the calendar, and you haven't probably vetted anybody. So I think that's also something that works in Mike's favor. And besides, I mean, if all the other stuff did not exist, the $65 million, there's still the surprising nature of this season. And now you have this still very screwed up calendar the NCAA continues to go with, which makes no sense. I know they addressed it some with the portal. I think they need to go portal spring only. You're tied in for a year. They got to do something. And you can only, and I'm like, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole. But yeah, I think that's another thing that helps Mike out in this situation is nobody saw this coming. I mean, I can't imagine anybody saw this coming. He certainly didn't. He thought this was his fastest, most explosive, strongest team he'd ever had.
He definitely didn't see it coming, and Alford didn't see it coming. None of us saw this coming.
No, I'm saying I think that's, again, I think that's probably to work to his advantage. In addition, I'm just saying, regardless of the money, the fact that nobody can prepare for this, and they always say an AD keeps 3 names in his top right-hand drawer. I don't know if that's true or not. You can ask Mike the next time you talk to him. I think that's another thing that works to his advantage is there was no way to prepare for this. And then, of course, listen, anybody that's going to take this job is going to evaluate this roster. And I went through a roster management exercise before we got on this thing. I wrote, don't just look at the roster, guys. If you want to study what this team may be next year as it exists today, write them down. By position, write it down. And you can, because you don't get a true feel for it if you just look at a computer screen. Write it down and then tell me what you think about next year and how long this thing is going to take to get turned around, because it becomes. And that is if everybody comes back, guys, and they knock it out in the portal. Not if people leave, and there are going to be people leave this program. I mean, listen, as Shane, my brother, likes to say, 25 years in college football. If they're not in the portal officially, they're still in the portal. All these kids are checking their options out. not at Florida, not just at Florida State, across college football. It has totally changed the way this business is done. But if you want to go through an exercise about how far this program has to go after this season, take you some hard stock paper, write down every position, and you look at the challenge this program has ahead of it. I mean, it's Mike's, to your point, Jerry, Mike's going to earn his money. He's going to earn his money in the next 3 months and the next 15 months. I can assure you of that, because he's got some work to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting little run to see if he can flip it twice. All these coaches work hard, so there's a human part of it, right? You feel for them. They put in exhaustive hours. I know that Mike's a guy that's in early, leaves late, first in, last out, all of those things. Yeah,
they know they know what they're getting into. They know this is a meritocracy. This is an accountability deal. They know.
Yeah,
and
I make a big point of that, Mark. There's no secrets here. Coaches, when they get into this business, know what the standards are, and they know that, the fans will want them fired 10 months later if they're not producing.
Yeah.
And so there's no secrets. I mean, I keep hearing people say, "Oh, Mike's got to make these tough decisions." They're not tough decisions.
No.
They're easy.
The conversations are tough. The decisions are very easy.
Yeah.
And
I don't think the conversations are that tough either. If the guy's not getting it done, he sees the look of frustration in Mike's face all season. He knows it's coming.
Well, listen, and I told you today, when you start seeing guys coach differently than they have the last time you saw them or they did in fall camp, something's up, right? I think I pointed that out to you today, Jerry. It might not have been you. I was standing next to somebody, and I was like, "Well, I haven't seen him do that." I think, and there's nothing worse in being. Listen, and even though you compartmentalize it, and you have to if you're going to be in this profession, but I remember our last year at South Florida, and we knew we were cooked after we lost to Ball State, and that was like game 6. And we knew we were dead men walking, and that is a sobering process to have to go through, because you have an affinity for the people that you work with, you have affinity for the university that you work for, and you have affinity for the kids that you're around day in and day out. So, you do have to compartmentalize it, but it's an awful feeling, and I hate that we have to address it, particularly when they're not done with this season or even close to being finished. But listen, we do a lot of things that we do because it's what happens in our industry, and we would not be doing our job if we were not sitting here talking about it today, as uncomfortable as it is. And, you do learn to compartmentalize things, and, none of this that we're talking about is personal, but, as I said before, and I think all 3 of you agree with me, you absolutely no excuse for being 1-6 at Florida State. I mean, it's just it's ineptitude of.
It went sideways, right? It went sideways. None of these guys went into it, wanting to do a bad job, right? And I'm sure they're all great. They're great guys. The ones I've met have been super. They've been really nice to me.
All right, guys,
right?
I got a question. When Mark, you're done, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah,
finish up.
I was just going to say, when you're in this business, you're right, Pat. It is the worst. It's the best when you're winning. It's the worst when you're losing. There's nothing in between. But you know it's happening. You kind of start losing your grip on things, and you kind of got to look back and just self-reflect and say, okay, where did it go sideways? Where did we make a mistake? And try to rectify it and see if you can redeem it. I mean, the only way to redeem it, like I said, is to win. If you win these next couple games, if you can beat Miami, if you can beat Florida, if you can pull something special up at Notre Dame, maybe you can redeem the season a little bit. And there's a way to do it, but you've got to get a hold. I mean, there's no term. I mean, we're here now,
right?
And you can pout, right? So it'll show some of the character of these guys. You can pout, say, woe is me, I'm being treated unfairly, it's not my fault, et cetera, or be accountable, figure out where it's gone sideways, find a way forward, find a path to victory, and coach your butt off. We talk about Brad Lawing on here a lot. When we went up to South Carolina, Brad was on the staff before and got fired. You know why Brad Scott retained Brad Lawing and kept him on staff? Because that dude worked his tail off, even though he didn't have a job. He recruited for the school. He kept that first recruiting class we had together and worked his tail off and never said, woe is me. He was getting paid by University of South Carolina, and he worked his tail off for the University of South Carolina, and he did the best job he could. And Brad Scott said, you know what? You're staying, buddy. I appreciate that. What do those rest of guys do? Never saw them. They quit recruiting. They quit doing everything and never saw them again, right? And that's the choice you have to make as an assistant coach, right? Who are you? And I think these guys are good guys. I think they're going to try it. But, the part of the problem is going to be identifying where is the problem and how can we correct it. For sure.
Yeah, and it's really, Mark, it's not a choice, you well know. I mean, you got to do it. I remember when Willie took over for Skip at South Florida, and I was one of 3 people retained, and I knew I was being retained, and that was to get the incoming freshmen and the mid-year junior college guys, mid-year high schools freshmen and the mid-year junior college guys into school through orientation. And I worked a 14-hour day, and Willie called me into his office and said, I got to let you go. And I said, yeah, I've been waiting on you to call me into your office. And, he did, I can't do this. I don't know you. I said, Coach, I understand. I mean, I get it. I just want, if I try to get a job and they call you and let them know that I worked hard for you for the last 45 days. And that's all I asked for you. But yeah, it's not an option, because what you don't want to do is get a bad recommendation from a coach that says if it goes south, this guy's he's going to quit on you. So yeah. And these guys won't have a choice. I mean, the last thing they can afford to do is say, well, when I told him, or he wouldn't work, those kind of things. All right. So we got a question from Bert Batoli. So how easy or difficult will it be to find obvious upgrades at various assistant coaching positions? Who wants to take this one?
Well, it all depends on, Mike's network, right? It's who you know in this business. And, the other thing is too, I think Mike has a pretty good reputation as being a good guy to work for. And that's the other thing, because there's two most important things: is who you work for and who you work with. And, I think Mike's a good guy to work for. So he'll have some candidates, but I don't know anything about his network. I don't know about anything from the people that he knows and the trees that he draws from. So a lot of it depends on that.
Well, he's from the Todd Graham coaching tree. I don't know if that helps any, because I don't know a lot of Todd Graham guys. But that's So listen, here's the other thing. Now,
and Florida State's very competitive in coaching salaries too, right? Jerry, aren't we like top 10 in coaching salaries? Yeah.
And listen,
it's still a brand. We're still a brand now. I mean, it's still Florida State.
And you recruit Florida.
And you recruit Florida. You live in Florida. You're right in the middle of it. So it's very attractive job.
Yeah, and clearly, whoever they go after is going to get multi-year guaranteed contracts, right? I mean, that's just going to be part of it. You're not going to assign a guy to a 1-year contract and get him to come if Mike's got to win 8 games next year. That's not going to happen. So whoever they hire, if they hire anybody, which we think they will, they're going to get 2 or 3 year contracts. There's no doubt about that. Now,
well, everybody does now, don't they?
Yeah, but I'm just saying. I mean, you got guaranteed money for 2 years. If it were to go south again or not be good enough next year, and Mike were to let go after next year, your assistants that you brought in have a parachute, right? And that's kind of why you see a lot of guys get 2 and 3 year contracts when they come into a situation such as this. So I think that helps you. And then the other part of it is these guys will come to Florida State for Mike if they think Mike's the guy that can turn this thing around, right? I mean, so they're going to have to trust Mike, and Mike's going to have to trust them. I think it's a two-way street in that regard. Now, we're going to hear all kind of names. I'm already seeing them on the board. Fish has put 4 names out there. I don't even know how you get into that right now. I don't know how people know who Mike's going to go after. To me,
they don't.
They don't.
They don't.
Just spitballing names to me is
Yeah, that's
ridiculous.
spitballing.
Well, I did see an airplane at the airport going to.
Yeah, Bob Stoops is going to be in town any freaking minute
Right.
now.
I know a real estate agent.
Yeah, it's crazy, but yeah, listen, I think we're all shocked that we're even having this damn conversation, right?
100%.
This was not the way it was supposed to go. Now, somebody asked, I think they were making a statement, and I did not know this. He is saying that Atkins' contract goes through 2028. Is that true?
I believe that to be true. Yes.
All right, so that will make it a little bit harder for a change to be made there, based on what you're saying about the money, Jerry.
No. I think, when you're looking at Atkins, I mean, his salary is $1 million. That's not $10 million. Okay. So between now and 28, you'd have to pay him out in 25, 26, 27, and 28. So if he was one, as an example, it'd be $1 million a year for the next 4 years.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. I just didn't know what was. Yeah. I don't know anything about.
And there's other coaches that, their salaries are $500,000 or $600,000. So, and they have maybe 1 year left on their contract. So money with the assistants isn't near the issue as it is with the head coach.
All right, so we got another question. Does Mike need an OC to call plays? Do you see Mike giving up the play? Does anybody on this thing think that Mike will give up play calling duties at Florida State? I do not. I think that's what he likes to do. I think it's part of his love of coaching, among other things. But I do not see. I don't see Mike. Now, I wish with his offense he'd get a little bit more creative with some of the things they're doing instead of going with the base stuff. But
he just needs a little more help. That's all.
Yeah. I don't see that happening.
I think, Pat, I'll look at Dabo as an example. And I think Mark Richt is another example. I think those guys want to call plays until they finally reach the point where they realize they can't be the CEO and the play caller too. I remember watching Mark Richt on his television show one day. He said, I want to announce the firing of an assistant coach at the end of the year. I mean, at the end of this program, I've announced the firing of a coach. And when they got to the end of the show, he announced he had fired himself as the offensive coordinator. He realized he couldn't do it all, that trying to be an offensive coordinator was taken away from his ability to be a good head coach. And I think as you get older, Bowden was very reluctant to give up play calling, as you know, Mark.
Yeah.
But after a while, when the stakes get bigger, I think when we were irrelevant, it was fun for Bowden to call plays. But once he got a sniff that we could win championships, I think the job got bigger.
Well, honestly, just keeping up with all the trends. I mean, the reason Coach Bowden gave it up was because we needed to move forward and evolve the offense, right? And it was he couldn't invest the time to do that and research it and do all the things he needed to do. But it's saying, I'm not saying the game's left Mike. I don't think that's the case at all. But it may get to that point, after a while, when with your hand in so many buckets and trying to manage this program and be a CEO, you've got to put your attention 100% into, how's this thing evolving, and eventually you get to that point. So I don't think he's at that point yet, but eventually it'll probably happen.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's crazy that we're even having these conversations in week 7 or 8 of this college football season. Now, listen, I know we said we'd stay on for an hour. We still didn't go through the portal. We still didn't really go through early National Signing Day and any of that. But I think this is a good stopping point because obviously the Mike Norvell show is starting, and Mike will be on the show along with Ron Dugans. I know that's carried live on FSU's website and streamed somewhere. It's not on television till Wednesdays, but around the state. But listen, any final thoughts, guys, as we go on, and we'll be back tomorrow at 3 p.m. and talk a little bit about Miami FSU, and we'll be back on Thursday as well. But any parting thoughts, Jerry? Any words of wisdom and positivity to those of us who don't see things more gray than bright?
I see. I'm reminded, Mark, of a Bobby Bowden quote. You know, when he was St. Bowden, he said the distance between a halo and a noose is about 10 inches.
That's about right. That's about right.
Well, I will quote the great Al Davis: "Just win, baby. Just win."
That's it.
And what we found out now is it only takes 8 games for that halo to turn into a noose.
Oh,
Dude, it started to turn into a noose shortly after the Georgia game.
Georgia Tech, yeah.
They were erecting the scaffolds. Some of our people.
You mean Georgia Tech, right?
Yeah,
Georgia
No,
Tech.
I mean Georgia.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah.
Well, I'm one of the few that
He had
think that
lost
game-
the team. He had lost the team when those guys.
I'm
didn't
one of
play.
the people that thinks that game did matter, and I do think there's some ripple effects from all that crap that happened last December. But I never. I'm not gonna hold that against it. I'm not gonna hold the result of that game against him or the program. Now,
So you come around on that then?
well, I still think there's some issues. I don't hold the game against him. I think that.
I see the scaffold being erected.
Yeah.
No, I didn't see that. I saw some issues with. I didn't like all the opt outs. I'm too old school. That's not how we did it when. I know I sound like don't get on my lawn, step on my lawn guy, but no, I'm not. I was not a fan of all the guys that left. I'm not a fan of that at all, and I do think it's.
And you
I think
like
it
some
meant-
of those guys, those players.
Yes, and I think it meant something. I don't think it meant nothing. I think there is. I do think that, and people hate me because I think it. I get in arguments all the time about it, and that's fine. We all get our opinions, and I'm not totally wrong, and neither are they. There's probably some truth in the middle, but no, I do think.
So Oklahoma fired their OC mid.
Oh yeah, Seth Luttrell.
Yeah,
and
Yeah.
Seth
wonder
was
what he did.
scored 3 points against South Carolina.
I'm certain there was something in the background.
Not a very good offense the rest of the time. I mean, I don't know if there was something nefarious going on, but Oklahoma's offense has been terrible this year, and I think that's the reason he got fired. And it just so happens that I think it's Andy Ludwig was the offensive coordinator at Utah. He resigned after they scored 7 points against BYU. Is that who they? No, it wasn't BYU. I can't remember who they played this week, but they only scored 7 points, and he resigned the next day. So I think both those guys were more on the field. The offenses were not getting it done. Although Andy's was weird because he'd been there 10 years. Seth has only been there maybe 1, maybe 2 years at Oklahoma, so maybe it just wasn't working as a fit with Venables. But yeah, I'm still not a big fan of that. I don't think you fire an assistant coach mid-season. I don't care. It's a bad look for everybody. But yeah, anyway, yeah. Well, we can discuss our dissenting views on last December, which I really don't want to talk about it anymore.
No, I don't want to talk. We talked about it Friday night. And
I thought that shit was going to end in August when this team reported for camp, and every single show we do, people talk about it in the message board part. And listen. As Jerry says, and I get a bigger and bigger fan of this every time we talk about last year. The shelf life of any single given football team is 1 year, and there's 40 new kids on this. 40 new kids on this roster.
Well, that's good news. I mean, it was bad news last year when we lost all those alpha dogs.
Yep. Yep.
But
Well,
it's good news that, this season's only 5 games. There's only 5 games left to it.
and usually I want football season to last like 20 weeks.
Yeah.
It goes by too fast. Listen, as bad as this year is, when November 31st, or is there a November 31st? December 1st rolls around, I'll be miserable.
Has September, April, June.
Yeah, I think it's 30 in November. December's got 31, so yes, November 30. But yeah, when December 1st, when that Sunday, December 1st rolls around, I'll be bummed. I mean, as frustrated as I get covering this team this year, I'll still be bummed that the football season's over. I mean, that's never a good thing. Hey, we're in the middle of 55 days of straight football, right? So we got that going for us right now. We got a lot of Sun Belt and MACtion going on Tuesdays and Wednesday nights. Some good football. So, but anyway, all right.
Man.
Well, I think we've peeled back some layers of this onion on FSU's future. We will be back tomorrow at 3 p.m. It'll be me, Fish, Nick, and JP, and Jerry and Mark. You're always willing to open to join us. We have really heated discussions on Tuesday, so it's always entertaining.
I'd love to get on, but I won't be able to. But however, I may be on the comments.
I thought we were going to scare Nick off the first time he came on there, but he has learned to have an appreciation for Tuesday, it's Bloody Tuesday. It's the podcast version of Bloody Tuesday with JP and Fish. Trying to wrangle those guys in is very difficult at times. But we'll be back Tuesday. We'll be back Thursday. Sometimes we have a Wednesday show. We'll be sure to post it on our YouTube channel. Please follow us at the Osceola YouTube channel if you're watching now or watching tape. Please hit the follow button, the notification button, and then please go to theosceola.com or floridastate.rivals.com and check out all of our content. We got recruiting news on there. We've got our practice report from the day, video reports from what Mike and the staff and Brock Glenn had to say after practice. Jerry's column, there's a process for evaluating changing football coaches just went up. We've got our freshman report, who should be playing, who is playing, and then Kurt's got his op-ed from post-game. And then my dog is jumping on me right now. That's why I'm laughing. And she's ready to go outside. And then I've got Second Look Sunday, where I broke down almost every single play of the game from Friday, even though that's kind of passe. We've got some updates on Javion Hilson. We'll talk about that tomorrow, but that's at theosceola.com. Everybody have a good night and enjoy your Monday night.
Go Noles.